So let's talk about some of the forces shaping the future of beauty. It's very much about self-expression these days. We're self-staging our lives like never before and finding new ways to express ourselves. And it really is about personalization and authenticity and storytelling. The other key thing I think that's really influencing beauty is this idea of safety plus sensory. The whole natural beauty industry, as well as the organic industry, was, driven in large part by this flight to safety, where consumers were very concerned about the chemicals that they put in their bodies as well as on their skin. And I think that now that's actually evolved quite a bit, where consumers are also expecting to have products that really perform very well, that work really well. And so it's moving beyond just safety to very much sensory plus safety, and it's very much about healthy hedonism. Digital lives, we're all living on demand, and as brands, it's no longer a one-way conversation. It's very much about a dialogue these days, very much about co-creation, where both the consumer and the brand actually bring something to each other. Borders are increasingly blurring as well. We've all been, we all understand omni-channel, right? Where we have to be where our consumers are. But it's no longer also about demographics, but very much about shared values and life stages. Prestige and mass are also blurring, where price point is no longer a measure of quality. And mindfulness, which is something that's very dear to our hearts, is a convergence of beauty, health, well-being, and sustainability. And not in a hippie granola way anymore, but very much in a cool, modern lifestyle way. So what is YOUniverse and what's driving it? So we're finding ourselves perpetually in front of or behind a camera. And this has helped us to develop an increasingly symbiotic relationship with images. So we're self-staging our universe, we're refining our values, we're curating our lifestyles, and we're cultivating our personas, whether it's real or aspirational. So this has a lot of implications for us as brands. And increasingly, we want brands to fit seamlessly with our own values and our lifestyle. So if we take Instagram, it's actually an interesting microcosm of a new visual expression, right? 400 million active monthly users. Facebook has about 1 billion. But there's 80 million photos posted daily, which is interesting and scary at the same time, right? Because how do you stand out? How do you really connect with consumers in a very meaningful way? And so the mutual attraction these days, it's very much, it like happens in a nanosecond these days, right? In a swipe, pretty much. Consumer and brand attraction and relationships are established based on a brand persona. So you look at someone's feed and you immediately connect or you don't connect. As well, peer and influencer validation also comes into play. This relationship is very elusive to capture, but it's much deeper because it's no longer one-dimensional. It's much more interdependent, It's what can we bring to each other, where the consumer actually brings something to the brand and the brand actually brings something to the consumer as well. So it's very much a two-way street. So in terms of brand personas, this is pretty much about, are we a match? And the match is made in a minute. And you can start to see that, brands have to actually cultivate brand personas beyond basic consumer benefits and product utility these days, right? So these are just some of my brands that I picked that I tend to follow. But when you look at the feeds overall, the first one is actually an apparel brand. The second one is a beverage brand. And the third one is actually a party supply brand called Oh Happy Day. And what's interesting about this is that, it's a mix of lifestyle. It's a mix of meat, potatoes, and sauce, right? So it's the whole lifestyle around it. So I think the interesting thing for us as brand builders is that there are tons of risks and opportunities in this. What is our brand persona beyond product? We have some key questions we need to ask ourselves and also cultivate, because it's a very changing landscape. You know, is my brand's persona compatible with the consumers that I want to attract and engage with? How do you build a persona in the absence of founders in terms of storytelling? I don't know if any of you have these challenges, but for us, starting a new brand, it's very interesting for us to actually ask some of these questions of ourselves. What's the right ratio, you know, of meat, potatoes, and sauce, right? The heroes, the product, as well as the sauce around it that makes a brand really interesting and appealing. And how do you cultivate and express other senses besides visual? I think the makeup and nails have actually had a huge traction in terms of being able to express themselves visually, and it'll be very interesting to see how that evolution plays out. And how do we evolve and adapt, you know, as we grow without losing our base, right? And how do you defocus, and where do you focus? Because everything is blurring and changing at a very rapid pace. So I think being in a corporation, what's really interesting about that is, you know, it really teaches you the discipline of focus. But because everything's changing, I think learning the discipline of where to focus and where to defocus is really important, and how to unlearn some of those things. So let's look at our brand, because we're basically launched about 2 months ago right now. So we're a baby brand, just about to take off. But for us, YUNI is actually where beauty business and yoga consciousness meet. So when we define our universe, we actually looked at it and saw that there's a growing consumer base. There are more than 22 million people who practice yoga on a regular basis in North America, and an additional 18 million really want to practice yoga. So it's a huge growing and loyal consumer base. And when we actually look at the market itself, it's also a huge market opportunity. The yoga market is valued at over $10 billion. And personal spending on yoga has increased more than 87%. And it's interesting when you look at Lululemon. Lululemon actually grew with a singular focus really on yoga and women. And it was quite interesting. They've grown to a $1.6 billion business. And it's, you know, so when you think how big is big, it's actually big, right? Now they're diversifying and they're going after different categories. And that was pretty much with a singular focus and very few countries that they were in. Beyond the mat as well, the fitness industry is really growing. 20 billion a year in the US. So there's huge opportunity in terms of the market. And for us, in terms of our universe, we saw that there was a white space opportunity. YUNI is the first yoga-inspired green beauty brand. As Francis said, what was really interesting was, you know, in 2012, my husband Manuel and I actually did, he's my partner in all things, by the way, that's Manuel. I said it's the first time I've ever been able to grope a guy that I work with, which is really nice, publicly. And he's pretty cute. So what's really great was we actually did, after a long career at Aveda and Estee Lauder, we took a break and we went and did our Ashtanga yoga teacher training. And actually through that process, we started to kind of dive in and understand what people were using, what did they love, what did they miss, and we were on this like Greek island called Amorgos, and you know, and it was absolutely beautiful, but we were on this deserted island for pretty much a month with a whole bunch of yogis, and what was really cool about that was, you know, yoga is very much values-based, right? And it really goes beyond demographics. I mean, these people, we were between 22 and 62. We're somewhere in the middle, in the 50s. But what was really cool about that was, you know, they were all from different ethnicities and social classes. And it really was a wonderful experience to be able to figure out what did they want out of yoga, what did they want out of their beauty rituals. And when we actually looked at that, there was a great connection between the yoga ritual. You know, yoga is one of those moments where you take time for yourself away from the world, and you're actually able to spend it going inside and having that moment for yourself. And when we thought about it, beauty is pretty much the same way too. It's that moment you take for yourself away from the world. And we were very interested by how to connect those two rituals. So outside of, there are very unique products and unique needs for this particular market. We were pretty interested by being much more values-based and solving problems in a very unique way. So a lot of the insights were really about convenience, portability, bringing pleasure to your practice as well as recovery, and also recalling some of those yoga moments through the senses, right? So we developed a range of 13 products that we just launched. And we're in yoga studios as well as in retail. So I know, it's a really big deal. It's scary as hell, by the way. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. But what's interesting is, beyond solving very unique needs, we organize our products based on lifestyle and rather than category. And so it made complete sense for us. It made complete sense for the yogis that we deal with. But it doesn't make sense for a lot of retailers. So when you talk to retailers, you know, it's very much about which buyer am I going to put you with? And I don't know how to make sense of this. But this is the way people shop. This is the way they live their lives. And so we're persevering because actually this is actually the way of the future. So when we look at a parallel, we're trying to innovate a category that's very much about yogis and active health seekers. There's no brand that actually serves this market. And we've seen some of these changes in terms of athleisure, right, in fashion. Sport has really infiltrated fashion. And we see that athleisure is, as athleisure is to, you know, a very sporty generation, we really believe that YUNI is to beauty's mindfully fit generation. It's going to be a white space opportunity, a really interesting opportunity for our brand. And I think for all of us as brands as well, you know, it's a very exciting and scary journey, but definitely one that's worth pursuing. So, thank you.